It's July the 6th, 2022. Well, start off today with a discussion of, I guess, that hope everybody had a happy 4th of July, and I guess other than the people in Highland Park, but essentially, well, I think the first thing that comes out of this whole situation is the clear failure of red flag laws to actually prevent mass shootings. And It's pretty clear cut. I'm not a big fan of the red flag concept, but I'm not quite as fearful as some of them are of it either. But the key thing is it didn't work, and this particular incident illustrates why it doesn't work. First of all, Illinois at the time, was a state with some of the relatively strict gun control laws for those that like those things. For instance, to even own a firearm in the state legally, you have to have a card issued by the state, which is sort of like basically a license to be able to buy and own a firearm. Okay, and apparently the rules there were such that if you're under 21, you had to have somebody, basically an adult, I guess a parent or guardian or something like that, to vouch for you as in the application. So here we have an individual who obviously had psychiatric problems, to say the least, who had actually been making threats to people, including against family members, who apparently police had at least a couple of contacts with him ahead of time. At one time, confiscated a set of knives he owned back when he was a minor, and a sword. But the point is, so this was known to police, but even after that, apparently the father had signed for him getting the firearms license, which then allowed him, once he turned 18, to buy rifles, shotguns, and I guess when he turned 21, apparently he was not quite 22 yet. He was somewhere over 21 to buy a pistol, or no, two pistols, I believe it was. But none of those weapons, only one rifle, was really relevant to the actual attack on July the 4th. So the point is that here you have all the indications where both the police know, the family knows, and is anybody going to red flag this guy? Really? I mean, everything you had to have to do it was there. So I think this is a general reason why the red flag laws don't work. What they probably have a bigger effect on is just people that, that somebody doesn't like for some reason. People, I think it's going to have more impact on things like domestic violence, if anything, than they would have on anything out in the public. But at any rate, even then, who knows? It's kind of a hit and miss proposition. So if you like these videos, please, subscribe. We're getting more subscribers. We need to get up to 100 at least. And I think something good's supposed to happen then. Give me a like if you like this video, and comments are welcome. Any rate, that's kind of the situation on that. Now, the law that was recently passed by that I've talked about before by the Congress, the Cornyn and company, that passed this bill, which I don't see. It's marginally a gun control bill at that. It does affect gun laws, but it really is a modification to the existing laws and to basically improve certain loopholes and things that were in it without really cutting back anybody's rights to any significant degree that I can see. And the good thing about this is it already addressed the situation exactly here about people between 18 and 20, which is when most of these, firearms were bought. At any rate, the license was acquired, and which they apparently require in Illinois. But the point is that, so already they have this thing about checking into juvenile records and so forth. So this may have some impact. But of course, it had no impact here because all the weapons were procured before the law was passed, and it takes time to set up a bureaucracy of this myth. And my point about this is, don't get me wrong, I know you're getting a little upset here. What I'm saying is it took up the space for something else that they'd be proposing right now that might have some momentum if the momentum hadn't been spent passing this otherwise somewhat innocuous bill that was passed, if you see what I'm getting at. In other words, it's sort of like the principle of, like in a movie where somebody's some threat is chasing after somebody, and they go in the room and close the door, and then they take some furniture and barricade the door with it while they try to escape out the window, while the threat is pounding on the door. Okay, they're going to get through the door perhaps someday, but at least you can get out the window first. And the election is kind of the window here, because we're in an election year, and the objective is to get to the election, to win the election, and try to mitigate any damage that any of these events do to our chances of winning the election. And that's my basic mode of thinking on the subject. Because if we can't get these Democrats out of power, the gun issue is only one of many issues that are going to be very serious, including voting and the Supreme Court and the filibuster and you name it. These guys want to really change the country in a bad way, and so that's the essence of what I've been thinking about this subject. And I tend to suspect there won't be any federal legislation passed between now and the next Congress over the subject because of this. We'll see if I'm right or wrong, but I think I'm right here. And we took up we expended the momentum on something that really deflected and didn't do much harm. And if you really look at the details, and in fact, in some areas it might even do some good. I'm not sure what impact certain things in it will have, and we'll find out later on that. Let's don't get off on that. I've already distressed that too much. We'll find out later. So anyhow, it's a tragedy for the people involved. We have, but another thing I like to point out about the issue here is, as this count, 7 people have died. Apparently 5 almost immediately, and 2 under medical care afterwards. I'm hearing differing numbers. Some were up in the 30-some that were injured. Still, and I don't know, does that mean that 30 were actually hit with bullets? Or, I mean, obviously most of them probably were, or they were injured in various other ways in the stampede that was set off by the attack, people falling and breaking bones and stuff of that sort. I heard some number, like about 19 were treated and released the day of the incident. So, given that you're talking about being hit with, rifle fire, one would tend to think those weren't really solid wounds, but I don't know. We'll find out more about the injuries. I'm sure a few of them are going to be very critically injured, obviously, and that's horrible. And we'll find out more. That's one piece of information that's been very lacking is the not, But from the fatality point of view, this is kind of on the lower end of the situation. If there weren't so many injuries, and if it wasn't in public and on the 4th of July, it probably would have fallen off the news fairly quickly. But I always rate these things by such issues. One of the bad things here is, of course, the attacker survived the arrest by the police. The ones where they either commit suicide or don't survive the police capture are good, because they get off the news quicker because they're in the trial, and therefore, the press has less to deal with. Eventually it just drops off the news cycle. Now his indictment, what the bond's going to be set at, probably no bond. His commitment probably to psychiatric evaluation. And that's, then whenever the trial actually happens, if there is a trial, or, whatever. I'm sort of the opinion that this guy may end up doing a psychiatric defense. Don't you see that? Just take one look at this idiot, and you'd say, yeah, it's going to be a psychiatric defense. You can see that coming already. Well, anyhow, but that's one of the aspects. And of course, the more this is the news, the more it gets the gun ban advocates spun up and motivated and financed and every other thing. So that's the risk in these kind of incidents. A whole different slant on it, which I kind of look at, is because we've looked at, can red flags or other laws prevent it? And then the other attitude is what the consequences are going in the future. The other thing that has been looked at, which I thought Tucker Carlson addressed very interestingly last night, is the fact that the majority of these people, particularly these young, mass shooter type people, tend to be on some type of psychiatric drug for some time before they do it. And there is some issue, if you look at the warning labels, as he points out, on these drugs about what side effects can have. They all look like the kind of thing that could enhance the probability of a disturbed person doing something violent. The irritability and depression and all these suicidal thoughts and all this sort of thing. And so one wonders if the over prescription of psychiatric drugs is that one of the key contributing factors to this? Because we didn't used to have this happening. At least any incident similar to that was extremely rare, every decade or something, not, all the time. So one may find out that maybe the overprescription of psychiatric drugs is a key contributor to this problem, along with, I would say, a lot of video games, maybe even certain movies. I think the whole mindset of the lack of a religious consciousness. I mean, all these kind of things could all compile to lead to the problem we're seeing right now. And so that's another attack on it. But ultimately, I think that the idea of legislating this stuff away is probably going to be pretty difficult, to say the least. And so at any rate, we'll just have to keep on and see what happens here, and hope for the best, I guess. At least the guy was caught before he did anything else. I'm not sure if he was planning on, or if the guy was so nutty he'd even have exactly any plan beyond the incident itself. And we'll obviously this thing is going to stick in the news for a while. But so I'll wrap this up for now, and the addresses of my various social media accounts are below there in the description below, and please, you can follow me on Twitter particularly, but also some of the other ones. I tend to post these on the other ones just to try to get people get more attention and more following. And we'll wrap this up for now, and until next time.